Hello, you, and welcome here at eSpace, the entrepreneurship space here at the University of Geneva during the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020. So tonight we are here together to have a discussion on the topic of how can humanity benefit from the evolution of work. A discussion which we will have with three distinguished panelists. First of all, we have Andrea Latino, which is sitting to my right. Andrea is a digital transformation and innovation manager. He's also a Forbes 30 under 30 and a global shipper. Then we have Laurent Mieville as well, which is the director of Unitech and the founder of the Geneva edition of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is now, today, this week, celebrating its 10th anniversary. And then we have our third panelist, which is Utkarsh Amitabh, which has been with us this morning giving a masterclass. Utkarsh is the founder of Network Capital. He's also a Chevening Fellow at Oxford, and he has been writing also for the Harvard Business Review. In addition to it, he's also a global shaper. So thank you to our guests for being here tonight with us. And I would also like to mention the fact that this session is co-hosted by Unitech and also the Global Shapers Community Geneva Hub. So before we go into the masterclass itself, there is an issue that is quite close to the hearts of all of the people here actually involved, which is the issue of diversity. So unfortunately, we don't have any women on stage today, and that's something for which I think I failed on the expectations, and we're sorry for that. But nonetheless, we are very convinced that the panel today is really qualitative and will be able to address this issue of importance in a very qualitative way. As I said, today we are talking about the future of work. We've had already 4 masterclasses on the topic today, a topic of importance, as I said. And the 3 panelists that we have today with us are going to have 10 minutes each to actually give their perspectives on this topic. And after that, we'll go on a moderated discussion. So, starting with you, Andrea Latino, thank you a lot for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
The floor is yours.
So first of all, let me thank you all the organization and my fellow co-panelists here. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So we are talking about the future of work, and the future of work is by its own nature a very complex phenomena. A phenomenon that is composed by the various interactions in between different players, different markets, different stakeholders, and so on and so forth. That means that in order to speculate about the future of work, we have to be, first of all, cautious, since we have seen during this pandemic the acceleration of some trends that were supposed to be, in some ways before this past year, a mirage, I would say. Think about the diffusion of smart working at scale, or we should better call it remote working, as most of the time of home working. And we have seen that some changes that would have been perceived as impossible just happened in a very short period of time. So when we consider that, there is this caution that we have to keep in mind. Nevertheless, I think we could be able to speculate a little bit on how it's going to be. And I think it's going to involve 3 main factors that are deeply intertwined in between each other. The first one, I think, it's related to the impact of technology. I think it's the elephant in the room. And I think that many people do have very polarized view about all of this. In some ways, there are techno-utopists, which all the time just say, well, technology is the cure, it's the medicine. They never talk about technology as being part of the illness, I would say. And on the other side, there are the dystopians. They just say, well, we'd better go back to the time of horses, I would say. So I'm kind of in the middle, related on all of this. I think technology is a tremendous force that we often do not recognize as, the basic of our societies are structured. If you think about the father of model economy, I'm talking about Adam Smith. He used to say that the basics of economics are related to the gains of productivity and division of labor. After that, it came Marx by saying that the overstructure is powered by the structure, by meaning that the economy is actually the layer that actually allows culture and society and politics to discuss issues and hopefully thrive. What is under all of this? There is a layer made of technologies. Without enabling technologies, a lot of economic models and a lot of business models cannot simply be enabled. Think about the diffusion of the light bulb. Before the widespread adoption of electricity, a lot of markets simply couldn't exist. Think about large appliances, televisions, computers, and so on and so forth. So we have to make sure that we deeply understand that no matter how big and proud we are about the conquests that we have made in terms of economy, politics, culture, and society, technology remains the kingmaker. It always has, it always will be. That doesn't mean that technology has to go unreined. We have seen the damages that technology unregulated can do. I'm thinking about the damages done to our democracies. I'm thinking about the damages done to competition and a lot of other stuff. And that means that in order to be sure that we gain as humanity the maximum advantage from technology, we have to be sure that the policies that we are making, that the way the corporate stakeholders, for example, are enabling technology to make our lives better is well thought of. That's the first point I would like to make. So also related to technology, I think there is reasons to be hopeful, especially for one of the most burning questions related to, for example, the advent of AI technologies, so artificial intelligence and everything that comes with it. So there is this issue related to the fact that we are thinking about the loss of jobs on a massive scale, and of course, on both the sides of the polarization, there are the ones that say, a lot of jobs are going to disappear, there's going to be mass employment, we have to develop policies that can counter that. And on the other side, there's somebody that says, okay, new jobs are going to be created, jobs that we don't ever think about. But of course, there are people that are in between. I'm thinking about the truck driver that could get displaced by level 4 or level 5 autonomy cars, which is the scale on which the autonomy of a car is described. What about that? What can technology do in order to help and make sure that those people don't end up in some vicious cycle for which they cannot find new employment and their position gets worse by the day? I think there is something that we should think about. If we think about the introduction of the iPhone for the first time and the focus that Steve Jobs used to give about the user interface and the user experience, we've seen so many people, starting from toddlers to older people to seniors, being accustomed about using those technology in a very intuitive way. I'm very hopeful about what we can do in terms of technology by thinking about no-code and low-code technologies, for which it would be way easier for a lot of different people to enter in the space, for example, of software development, which is one of the biggest drivers of innovation nowadays, since all companies are becoming technology companies, and I will address that in a second. And so I'm not meaning to say that truck drivers are going to become software developers. I'm just saying that if we have a little bit of faith in what this kind of technology, this kind of automation technologies can put in the hands of people, probably we could experience some differences in the way we manage this kind of transitions. So the second point is related to insightful public policy. This is a topic for which the great orchestrator, no matter which is your economic background, if you are more, a fan of Keynes or you are a fan of Hayek, of course, I'm grossly oversimplifying, but nevertheless, the role of the state has to be, no matter if it is big or small, it has to be strong. So in order to make smart regulation, the state has to think, and the governments have to think about the ways that jobs could evolve, technology could make them evolve, And so, something that is deeply interesting to me is this whole idea of introducing for the first time something which I call an indemnity related to competencies. So, as you know, nowadays in contracts between workers and companies, the regulation is on with the idea that you have a base salary, a bonus, and then year after year, related to seniority, of course, you get improvements in some ways in terms of salary, in terms of benefits, and so forth and so. What I'm thinking about is if you actually manage to train yourself through formal training provided by the company or by institutions such as the University of Geneva and so forth, what happens is that you get in a scheme of policy that allows you to be gratified economically from the fact that you actually keep developing yourself. And it's a win-win situation because, of course, you have more prepared, a more prepared workforce that keeps evolving. And at the same time, of course, you have companies which are more competitive, more productive, and so on and so on. The third actor, I think it's really interesting to talk about, it's companies. As I mentioned before, companies are becoming, all type of companies are becoming tech companies. Simply because the boundaries between the physical world and the digital world are going to become way less concrete as time passes. COVID has given us a great example in this fashion. So what I'm thinking about is the whole idea that companies still have to, I would say, complete a transition between managerial style related to the past century, which is command and control, and move to a more objective and key result approach that is, way more accustomed and tailor-made for organizations which are liquid, for which the workforce doesn't really have to be in the same place physically to work together, which is way more digital and so forth. But this requires a change of mind, a change of business model, a change of paradigms that is really hard to find at scale nowadays. But companies that want to remain competitive will have to face this. We'll have to face this whole idea that the managerial model has to change and that digital transformation is no longer an option. So that means that all of those companies that are, waiting and saying, well, I could change in a couple of years. I could change in 5 years. I'm not caring about the disruption that is coming from a sector which is not mine, but near mine, because we have been doing this for, 25 years, 50 years, and so forth. It always worked. Nowadays, things can change really fast, and it's not just because of a pandemic. It's because the world is changing at a pace for which I don't think that society, politics, and culture, and companies themselves can keep the pace. Most of them are struggling, and so I think the whole concept behind this is that those stakeholders that I mentioned have to work together. If they work together in order to ensure and craft the new rules, the new approaches to this kind of innovation, I think we are going to be put in a more positive future, in the direction of a more positive future.
Thank you a lot, Andrea, for this insightful introduction to the topic. Really look forward to the discussion we're going to have just in a few minutes. But before that, Laurent Miéville, so as I said, you're the director of Unitech, initiator of this beautiful Entrepreneurship Week here at the University of Geneva. What's your perspective on this issue?
Yes, thank you. And also a pleasure for me to be here and with distinguished colleagues and speakers. Maybe I'll spend a little more time on my, because I'm older, personal experience and maybe the vision that I've seen evolving, the vision of work. And maybe I'll start with the 3 elements. The first element is entrepreneurship, because we are in the Global Entrepreneurship Week. And when I was younger, much younger, I was able to stay 3 years at Stanford and then 1 year at Boston in a very, very intense hub of entrepreneurship. So it was and it is still the very important element to be in that place, in that physical space to experience entrepreneurship. And I could see 20 years ago a lot of people from Europe arriving in Silicon Valley and being immersed in this entrepreneurship world. And then even if you don't have the specific appeal for entrepreneurship, you get so much soaked into that atmosphere that suddenly people would become entrepreneurs. And so I could really feel by staying for many years in this place was that the physical space was very important to define basically what you would be working in the future. That was in the past. I think now what we see also here in Geneva is that entrepreneurship is becoming much wider. It's not only linked to technology based in Silicon Valley or or maybe life science in Boston area. It's much more, I would say, open. I give you an example. When we started on Monday the opening of the Entrepreneurship Week in Geneva, we invited people that are really creators for arts, and also we compared the way they are entrepreneurs with people that are much more based on technology. And what you see is that the artists, they first think about the art and then they try to figure out what technology do I need to reach the goal of my art element that I'd like to create. My experience as a technology transfer officer is the opposite. We find technology because there are people very bright in the university that comes to us and say, look, we have this invention. Then we have to figure out what to do with it. So what you see is that people with very different mindset, artists on one hand, technocentric scientists on the other hand, they all move together in the same space, which is the entrepreneurship space. That means that entrepreneurship is becoming very widespread now everywhere. It's like soaking everywhere. And you don't have to be in Silicon Valley, you don't have to be in Boston. Of course, you have some advantage to be there, but it's not anymore so important because everybody is thinking entrepreneur in a way. So the first point is, for me, entrepreneurship is becoming much widespread. You can be an entrepreneur as an artist, you can be an entrepreneur as a techno, deep tech specialist. So evolution of work is also linked to entrepreneurship everywhere, not only in startups, but also in your organization. Second point is how we organize this week, actually. You are an entrepreneur by doing what you are doing, and what everybody is doing in this studio is an entrepreneurship effort. When I came in, people don't see that, but just behind me, there are a curtain with a lot of people working with a lot of equipment. This is all entrepreneurship effort, and you have to be congratulated for that because you were able to set up such a very nice studio. We are actually in a classroom in University of Geneva. So that is a practical application of what I said, is that, and this is also why University of Geneva, I think it has a role to play, is to give people the possibility to become an entrepreneur within their academic experience. Stanford is doing that very well. It was at University of Boston. They were having dedicated people just to help students to become entrepreneurs. So I think now it's becoming really a mainstream element. Probably when I hire people, I look what kind of entrepreneurship activity they've done. It could be very wide, but this is a very strong element. So second point is that figuring out that everybody is an entrepreneur in a way or another, the question is how can you bring the entrepreneur element in that person? So what kind of entrepreneur are you? Maybe that could be an interesting question. You are an entrepreneur in like doing in studio and organizing an event, finding the right people, making sure that there will be an interesting discussion and everything. The last point I'd like to make is that, okay, now that entrepreneurship is very important and you help people to become entrepreneur at the university, but on different places, the question is the politics around it. And my third hat is I'm a part-time politician in the Canton de Vaud. So I sit, actually tomorrow I will be presiding some commission looking at the change of a law for the regional of Vaud. So when you have this strong entrepreneurship push, you have, in order to make sure that this is benefiting also society as a whole, inclusion is very important. So how are you making sure you give the tool and you give the possibility to everybody in the society to develop entrepreneurship efforts? How can you, as a politician, make sure that when you discuss a law or when you are to look at a law suggested by the government, the local government, this is actually taking the steps that is needed to make sure that you bring everybody along in this? Because if you don't, then you have a big problem, because your society will be shared between those who are able to be an entrepreneur, that have access to tools, that have access to network, and those who can just look and see the train pass by. So I think the last point I'd like to make, maybe the most important one, is to be able to also bring this inclusion in an efficient way in politics, which is not easy, because it's a lot of detail. So having a big picture understanding, I'd give you just a short example. When I started my political work at this parliament of the region of Vaud, which is one of the region of Vaud, 1 million inhabitants. So I was trying to push the entrepreneurship also for young people. My suggestion as a politician was to say, look, can we put more training of entrepreneurship for young adults between 8 and 14 of age? And the goal was to say, you have to train them very early to bring this idea of entrepreneurship. It's fun, empowering people, letting you decide, team building and everything. But what I saw as a politician is that I was facing people on the other side that were much more conservative, and they killed this idea, because I was also very inexperienced, so I didn't understand that I had also to play the politics a bit. But at the end, the suggestion was not taken, because people said, look, I mean, it's full, we have too many things to teach these students, these young people. So there's no room for that, and it's going to be complicated. And so at the end, what you realize is that part of the political system was not willing to adapt to let young people be trained for that. So again, I think my role now as a politician is to try to push always to make sure that we help people to be also trained very early. And the future, to be positive, I see much more understanding now in politics than it was before. So I think if I would come back now with my proposition, it would be supported, because people understand that entrepreneurship is not only financial company trying to have young people sell stuff to make money. No. It's much wider than that. It's letting people, giving them the tools to become a real entrepreneur and to really develop what they want to develop. Could be art, could be anything, but not only finance. And I'm very hopeful that also this pandemic is also giving the signal that everybody has to adapt, but everybody has the means to become an entrepreneur.
Thank you a lot, Laurent, for this also very insightful discussion. I think there will be a lot of things to build on, and now I think it's a great time to go to you, Utkarsh. So Utkarsh, again, for those that are just joining in, so you're the founder of Network Capital. You're a Chevening Fellow at Oxford, also a writer for the Harvard Business Review and the Global Shaper. Utkarsh, you've been here with us this morning, but what's your perspective on this issue?
I believe that the future of work is going to be defined by people pursuing their curiosities and passions much more than before. So if you look back, what happened this year? Almost 400 million people lost their jobs, right, across sectors. Its number is perhaps closer to 500 million if you really count everything. These jobs are not coming back in the short term. So people essentially have to fend for themselves. Now, how do you recreate yourself? How do you reinvent yourself? I loved the point that was made about low code and no code, because it's very easy to talk about, say, artificial intelligence after every sentence. But it's very difficult, to somebody who's lost a job recently to say, why don't you go and learn artificial intelligence and try to do that? So I think we must be very intentional in how the language that we use in communicating the ideas about the future of work. So what is the purpose economy or the passion economy? A few years back at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, I often used to hear the word Uber for X model a lot, right? Even Network Capital, the company that I started, I call it like Netflix for careers. So it's more of an explanation, but essentially what we do is a We're a subscription-based future of work company. We offer mentorship, Netflix-like content focused on careers, and access to a global community that people can reach out to. Why? So that people can reinvent and recreate themselves as they think about the future. We say that people who have lost their jobs, why don't they retrain themselves or learn new things? Because it's very hard, especially when there's a lot of pressure. One of the hardest skills that all of us need to develop in the 21st century is the skill to reinvent ourselves. And we can't reinvent ourselves alone. But passion economy or the purpose economy offers a unique opportunity to, as you were pointing out, the opportunity for people to monetize things that they are curious about, things that they are passionate about. And I love the point that was made about the intersection of art and technology, science and philosophy. Everyone is essentially an entrepreneur, a political entrepreneur, a policy entrepreneur, and a tech entrepreneur like myself. It's a way of life, and the passion economy provides both the financial means in terms of a business model, the meaning which all of us crave for when we think about work, and also a way which is not dependent on institutions. So as we are looking forward, when we are thinking about the future of work, you'll notice that the reason these 400 million or 500 million jobs aren't coming back in the short term is because there has and there will be a huge reduction in institutional jobs. And there are a variety of reasons for it. So people have to create their own entrepreneurial path. You are the CEO of your own career. And I think we need to create a system where companies, governments, policymakers are working closely together. But essentially, nobody cares about your career than you. So the thesis is that you want to transform this discussion from a meta-theoretical discussion where AI is thrown every third word to something which is very practical. You know, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love AI. We use AI to personalize content on Network Capital for people. But I think one has to think about how you can sort of democratize its learning, and specifically for who? So in my case, for the passion economy, for the purpose economy, how does the artist in Paris, whose cafe has been shut down, how do you help that artist create and build a business model so that that person can recreate the experience using technology? How can people essentially monetize things that they know and embark upon a different career? On Network Capital, there are examples of hundreds of people who've lost jobs in the middle of the pandemic, have pivoted from sectors as diverse as finance to becoming a baker and then an Instagram sensation. I love to give the example of Vicky Benson, who studied zoology, then got an MBA at the University of Bath, and today is a YouTube entrepreneur known most famously for Pasta Grannies, an internet sensation which talks about Italian grandmothers talking about traditional pasta recipes. And you might think it's just a passion, but you're perhaps mistaken. This YouTube channel has millions of subscribers, millions of views collectively taken, and that person has figured out both an advertisement-based model as well as a subscription-based model, as well as a speaking-based model, as well as a consulting-based model. And this is a person that started in development. And I think this access or this way of looking at your job as something that you have to direct gives you a lot of autonomy, which is one central element of work in the coming future. There are two more elements to it, which Daniel Pink talks about, and I've written about it in my book as well, is that of mastery and purpose. So mastery is really important because one has to think about what does one master after all? Which skill? What do I learn? And this cannot be a wild goose chase. This week I'll read about EdTech, next day I'll invest in blockchain, day after something else. Because you can't keep following every hot trend because you'll go crazy like that. Instead, you need to follow your curiosity and figure out how might you adapt or use the tools and techniques of today to build on something that you're actually curious about. And the element of purpose is really important also because, because you have to reinvent yourself multiple times and because it's a very hard process, unless and until you truly care about what you're doing, you will not have the energy or the stamina to keep continuing. And I think, just summing it all up, entrepreneurship or thinking is a way of life. I hope that you get a lot more support for your vision for school because Network Capital, my company, has partnered with Government of India to take a very similar entrepreneurship module as you talked about to the classrooms. So what we do is that we bridge the boardroom classroom divide. So the Government of India has come up with something called Atal Innovation Mission under the aegis of Niti Aayog, which is a planning commission. And Network Capital is a partner there. And what we do is that we help run the Mentor India program, where we send mentors to schools across the country to, at a very meta level, try and democratize innovation. What does that practically mean? Tell kids that you don't necessarily need to keep up with every hot trend. You don't need to play finite games where the rules are defined. You can essentially become your own CEO. And I think that's the kind of possibility that we need to paint in front of school kids, most importantly, because there is a very strong link between how innovative and how empowered school students face, especially from the low-income background, and how innovative a country is. Look, I'm Indian. I studied abroad, but essentially in India or any other middle-income country or low-income country, you can't go from becoming, say, a low-income country to a middle-income country without lifting up the tail. So you do need to do two things. You need to take or democratize the benefits of entrepreneurship and take it to the grassroots. And also, you need to make sure that you're creating or taking innovation to the grassroots. And I think towards that end, this Atal Innovation Mission pioneered by Niti Aayog, the Planning Commission, is a step in the right direction, and we are, Network Capital is a very proud partner. I hope that your measure passes, because I can tell you from data for the past 4 years, it's a transformational program for learning, and how many micro entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs it will create, I think time will tell, but so far it looks good.
Thank you a lot, Utkarsh, also for this insightful presentation. I think we've already, in 30 minutes of presentation and introduction, we've covered a broad array of issues. And I want to go to you now, Andrea, because you said something that really struck me, which was this notion of saying, let's go from the big hype, AI, and this big policy making now to the concrete stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so you've been in policy making also. What's your perspective on that? How do you see this transformation from the big talk to the concrete stuff?
Well, changes are hard. They are hard in companies. They are hard for people, but especially they are hard for governments. I have this not really unique, but a broad perspective because I'm an entrepreneur. I've worked in the public in my home country, which is Italy, and I've worked as a consultant, and I still work as a consultant for companies of all sizes, including multinationals. So what you see here is that most of the times there isn't a deep understanding of the practical applications of a lot of technology. Let's take an example. I know that a lot of people are going to be angry and mad at me after I'm going to say this, but I'll say it nevertheless. Take blockchain. Blockchain is an interesting technology, but as I often like to describe it, is a solution searching for a problem. What do I mean by that? If you look at the last revolution related to computing, you had some killer apps on specific platforms. So for example, for the PC, it was the Office package. Way before that, the Lotus package by IBM and so forth. For blockchain, we have a direct application, which is, of course, the cryptocurrencies and so forth, which we are struggling to regulate, both in Europe and in other countries. But at the same time, there isn't really an application apart from smart contracts and a lot of more niche applications which you wouldn't be describing as killer apps, I would say, from my point of view, in my experience. What does that mean? It means that if you're a government and you have a budget, for example, in research and development, I'm thinking about my own country of Italy. They actually, I think they were on the verge of putting money for a public fund related to blockchain, while the Italian public administration struggles doing basic things such as a complete digital access to the demographic information of their population and making sure that that is available to all the branches of local government. So what I'm saying is that before you run, you have to learn to walk. And that's the whole idea related to technology. We like to bet ourselves into the idea that those verge tech technologies are going to resolve the underlying problems of efficiency, of business models, and so forth, but most of the times they don't. Of course, as I said in the beginning, those are enablers. So we have to keep and have a great respect for those kind of enablers. Without wheels, you wouldn't have a car. Without a car, you would be moving by horse. With a horse, you have, of course, low level of productivity. So think about before the introduction of the steam engine. Before the steam engine, you had a limitation related to the power of your muscles in terms of energy or related to the muscles of animals. So you wouldn't have those huge productivity gains that came after the introduction of those technologies. So what does that mean? It means that we have to understand a little bit better how to separate the hype from the concrete. Let me put it in a more concrete way, I would say, related to companies. So as of now, a lot of companies are still living, for example, inside of them with legacy software, which is actually not enabling the possibilities of digital transformation. When we talk about digital transformation, most of the times, there is no clear definition of what digital transformation actually is. And it's a struggle. Because if you think about it, there could be one definition. Is the use of integrated technologies, so technologies that can make sure that they talk between themselves. There are no data silos, so you can actually enable those AI applications we were talking about without making, hypes and jokes actually about that. And at the same time, inside organizations that are complex and driven by people, so if you don't have people that are actually trained to use 100% of those technologies, you're losing potential. And most of the times when I see digital transformation projects inside companies, what I've seen is that they spend a lot of money on technologies, but then the first thing they cut is the training for the personnel. And that is a huge mistake, because every time you don't make sure that those kind of technologies are used 100%, you're losing potential. And the third part is related to the business model. A lot of companies just adopt technologies because of the hype, because they don't really see an opportunity or potential, but just because they want to be, in the trend. It's also a matter, I would say, of corporate politics, inside politics. So it's not really related just to public government, it's also inside companies, and we know the bigger the company it is, the more bureaucracy there is. And of course, this kind of games do play out. But the point is that you have really to think about the business models that you're actually enabling by those technologies. So if you think about digital transformation as a way to reduce your costs, so to increase your overall efficiency, or at the same time to enable new business models, you actually have to do a deep dive on your products, on your services, on what you are doing, on what makes you competitive in spite of everything that is happening all over the world, if your product is really, still at the center of your market or not. So technologies, and especially digital transformation, can shape entire industries. We have seen it with the phone. We are seeing it on a lot of other markets. Think about, for example, we are here in Geneva. Think about the luxury market. So think about what Apple has done with the Apple Watch in terms of smartwatch. They created a category. And as of now, a lot of people, especially young people, are saying, well, of course, I'm going to take the big brand Geneva-made watch from when I'm older, and I don't know, to symbolize maybe an achievement or something like that. but my everyday driver is an Apple Watch. So what does that mean? It means that a lot of times companies have to look into themselves and try to understand a little bit better how can technology actually enable me to do something different from the things that I've done before, probably even radically different from what they are doing. Moving from, for example, a business model, I'm thinking about manufacturing, for which you do something which is called servitization. So you actually are a company that produces goods, and you sell on the market, and you sell single units, for example. Well, at some points you change yourself and you became a service-driven company, because your product that you're serving to your market, it's no longer, for example, a one-shot purchase, but it's a subscription model. And that is way more sustainable in terms of cash flow, in terms of possibilities, and so forth. And of course, this means more competition. This means a possibility of and a risk of failure. But entrepreneurship, in its core, it's about risk. Of course, if you are a banker, what you're thinking about is to build a portfolio. For example, if you are an investor, you're building a portfolio and you're trying to managing risk. So I would like to say something as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs do not like to take big risks. If they can, they try to reduce them as much as possible. But nevertheless, most of the times, you have to believe in something, Steve Jobs used to say, you have to believe in something. Karma, God, whatever. But you have to believe that something that is not really in the scope of your view can be something that is as transformative as those technology and digital transformation at all allow you to do that. Government is the same thing. With government, you have to understand really, and you have to understand how to separate hype for something concrete. And in order to do that, you have to go back into understanding and analyzing which are the pain points of your citizens and start building up from that. A lot of this disaffection with nowadays politics is related to the fact that the elites are perceived as far from the common folk, the people, and so forth. I think that starting again with public discussions related to the impact of technology is an inevitable step in order to make sure that this transition is good, it provides value, and provides value for everyone.
Thank you a lot, Andrea, for this insightful. I'm so fortunate to be I think the only person in the audience almost to be here sitting with you and feel this energy. And now I want to go, and I want to go to Laurent, because I think that, if I'm not mistaken, this edition of the Global Entrepreneurship Week marks its 10 years anniversary. So you've been around entrepreneurship for quite some time, especially here at the University of Geneva. And I think that the whole team of eSpace is really thankful to the trust that you've put in ourselves to actually deliver this event. And you've been extremely supportive, the whole team of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is also an attitude in some ways that I will say is quite unique, and which is not maybe shared in all areas of public administration. I haven't seen that much level of confidence in many other places. How have you seen the evolution maybe of the attitude of, especially in government or administration, how have you seen this maybe an evolution of attitude on the topic of entrepreneurship? How has it come up or down, I don't know, in the agenda?
Yes, I have to say that with the University of Geneva, it has always been somewhat easy to actually push these kind of ideas. If I go back to the first editions of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, maybe I can give you a very short historical background. I was coming back from Boston after 1 year being there, writing a book on technology transfer, but I was actually sitting in an economic department. That's also something interesting. I'm a physicist, but I like to reach out to other fields. And I felt that a lot of people on the economic department of the University of Boston were looking at technology transfer. So I said, why don't I take 1 year off and work with you guys to understand better what you are looking at, and I can help you also by giving my perspective as a practitioner. But when I was there, I realized that actually the department was called ITech, Institute for Technology, Entrepreneurship and Commercialization. And I could see that I was actually within an academic setting serving students from Boston University to help them being more entrepreneur. So when I came back, I thought, okay, I'm at the University of Geneva. I need to serve also the students. I serve the researchers as a technology transfer officer. I look at what they discover. But students, we were not actually serving them. And I thought, why don't we try to start? Also, I talked with other entrepreneurs in Geneva, and they said, well, there is this great Global Entrepreneurship Week going on in November. Why don't you try to do something at that time? So with a small team of people, we decided we do that. And then the university response for that was very open. But actually, because University of Geneva was not really seeing itself as an entrepreneur university, we thought, okay, we give a shot. We give the opportunity to students to actually look if entrepreneurship, we call libérer vos idées, so free your ideas, because it's not make money or get your IPO. And it was really giving the trust to students to do their own stuff. And coming back to what you said with eSpace, it's giving the trust that you guys, you students, are able to do very great things if we give you just a little push. And we realized they were the Students Association, the students, they took this on and they said, we are willing to do something. And it was a great story from the first edition to now. So to just summarize, I think if you tell students that we trust them and it's just go ahead and we try to help you out, maybe making the link between you and the head of the university, just to make sure that you get also the trust of the head, and it works very easy that way. So I think University of Geneva has been really key by helping students in a very simple way, just by giving them trust to do what they want. Last example, the first edition or the second one, the students decided they want to open a beer bar in the middle of the university hall. And we thought that's a great idea, because you can sell beer and try to organize yourself, be an entrepreneur as a beer barman. The problem was to get the authorization from the state of Geneva. So I remember calling the state of Geneva and said, look, we are trying with students to open a beer bar within the university. And the guy said, well, interesting. And you saw it for the Entrepreneurship Week. Oh, yes, no problem. But just apply for it. And in 1 month, we give you the answer. And I said, no, I need the answer for tomorrow. But they did it.
They did?
Yes. And I think the message is that if you just try, and maybe people like us, a bit more senior, by helping these students, they realize not everything, but many things are possible.
Yeah.
So just do it.
Excellent message. Really like it.
It's amazing, and I'm like really so thankful that I'm in this university, because it's my sixth year here now, and I think it's the same for all the students part of this this like a group of students organizing this. But I've been in associations ever since, and I've been able to do so many stuff with so many support, and that's really like an amazing experience. And now I'm moving to you, Utkarsh, because, and I want your advice on this. What do you do if you don't get this space? If the environment you are in is more kind of locked in, and you don't feel that you can actually, explore the possibilities that you may have?
Yeah. If you read my book, The Seductive Illusion of Hard Work, there is a chapter specifically focused on this question. How do you transform your adversity into a competitive edge? So there is a full-fledged framework for it. But I don't want to talk in theoretical terms. But adversity or big challenges are also opportunities, as long as the people who are on the ground have the tools and the techniques to convert it. Whether you look at political struggles or economic struggles or social struggles, when you really push to the brink is when your best comes out. But also, most of us are not really taught or equipped how to deal with such circumstances. Have any of you studied resilience as a subject? Grit? How to learn? Instead, we are taught very specialized subjects from the very beginning. For example, I remember, I enjoy math. I'm good at math, I understand. There was a lot of in-depth discussions on logarithms upfront. And I think that specific session was perhaps too soon for not required for everybody. Maybe somebody like me could have studied it, but I think something like grit and resilience, which teaches you to transform that adversity into an edge, that should be taught to everyone. So, we are in University of Geneva, so let's also talk the role of education. The role of university has become, essentially not University of Geneva per se, but on an average university has become basically a factory to dole out hyper-specialized courses to everybody. And that is not the future of entrepreneurship or the future of education. You essentially need to give entrepreneurs or learners the building blocks so that they can create the future they want, which might include, say, setting up a canteen or a cafe in the middle of a university, which is a good business opportunity, to basically building a low-cost vehicle that takes you to moon. So the thesis can be very broad as long as we ask the right questions. So I think if you're not getting the right opportunity, you need to essentially, what I like to call, augment your luck surface area. So luck surface area is a concept made up of two things. If you want to get luckier, and if you feel that things are not working out over and over and over and over again, you need to do two things. First, do great work, and second, tell lots of people. You can't get lucky consistently without doing both together. Now the question is, how do you do great work? So that comes down to the mastery point that I was making earlier. Pick something where you have a unique advantage to do something. Don't be the 30th cafe on the university street, because that by definition is not going to be taking you too far. However, feel free to be the first, vegan cart in Geneva that runs in a certain way, offers a subscription to people. You just need to know, are you curious about it enough? And second, do a great job of telling lots of people, because that community building, it's not marketing. Marketing is very gimmicky way of looking at it. But this is basically building a community which will be an exchange of ideas, right? Just like if you look at, essentially how I came to this conference, or how I got my book, or how I started my Harvard column, a lot of that will come down to essentially different elements of community working out. And then, yes, me also trying to focus on different things. But this is not specific to me. I didn't do anything particularly unique. I just kept augmenting my luck surface area by trying to do great work in something that I genuinely cared about and building a community. And this is universal. This is not specific to me or my education background or my work experience or whatever. This is something that every person does. But you need to be taught that it is doable. We are taught that, when adversity strikes, when you don't get the first outcome, when you don't get rank 1 in that university exam, or you don't get funding from whatever you really, really wanted, your life is over. Your life is not over. Your life is just beginning. If you want to get lucky, you just need to keep flipping the coin and keep waiting so that you find the right product, entrepreneur, and problem market fit, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thank you a lot, Utkarsh. I don't know if it was, maybe Machiavelli that was saying that you have this goddess that is Fortuna, and you have to, in some ways, kind of try to seduce her so that you get luck. And I think that's actually something that the teacher here at the law school actually told us in class, and I found it so amazing. This idea that luck is not just something that comes out of nowhere, but you have to provoke it in some way. Mm-hmm. And now we go to you, Andrea, because yourself, now getting out of the policy making, but that maybe we'll come to it later, but yourself, you've done a lot of things. Mm-hmm. You've done a lot of things. And when I hear you also, Utkarsh, I hear that there is this notion of trying to find something you're good at. Mm-hmm. But how do you find this thing? Do you have one thing at the beginning, or how do you get there?
I have this story that I like to tell about, and I think it's very local. I don't know how much it's going to resonate with our audience, but maybe with somebody it will. So when I was 6 or 7, I spent most of my days not really learning how to play football. I repeat, I'm Italian, so this is considered like a treason in my country. And what happens is that I was the only boy who wasn't able, to play soccer. And nowadays, I'm not capable of doing it. But nevertheless, what I've spent most of my time with was on my brother's lap. And he was really into computers at the time. So that passion kind of trickled down to me. And I've spent a lot of years, and I mean a lot of years, also while studying, of course, so elementary school, middle schools, and everything, by using various applications on computers, graphics applications, compiling Linux distributions, and so forth. And you would say, okay, so what does that mean with the question? How does it relate? So when you put yourself in a position for which you can experiment, and you're experimenting in some kind of a safe space. For me, it was my home, it was my, my bedroom and everything. You can actually try to put your toes in a bit of different lakes, I would say. So I tried with graphics, I tried with coding, I tried with system administration. And after that, when I had to choose my university path, it was a hard time because we had some very important economic struggles in my family. I always say that I'm a failed engineer most of the times because unfortunately I was one of the ones that were really good at math, but I was really fascinated by science and technologies. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to enter a college related to engineering and so forth. So I said, okay, what is something that I'm passionate about that I can bring together? What can I cross-pollinate in order to make sure that I can get in the field that I like, which is technology, innovation, science, without, having to be strictly an engineer? And it came to my mind because in those years I was very politically active. I liked it a lot and ended up choosing political science. And to all of you that are doing political science, do trust me, you're not wasting either your time or your money, no matter what other people say, because you have a very broad view and it's going to be important in the future. So what happens is that I understood that what I wanted to focus about for my, for my studies were to be technology regulation. So I ended up at the beginning of my career doing exactly that. So I've worked at the Prime Minister office of my country. I work on all of that, and a lot of people were not really interested on the topic, on a specific topic. So I found my niche. I tried to build my own luck. And a few years later, I built a couple of companies, and a lot of the understanding that I've bought from different experience, those with graphics and those with computing and so forth, and regulation, gave me a strong competitive advantage that I could, compound by mixing different type of experiences. So as I always like to say, I'm 30, I just turned 30, and what I've done for the past 10 years, deliberately, was to treat my life, my working life and my life, as a diversified investment portfolio. So I tried to, invest in different things, which were kind of unrelated to each other. And I know a lot of you people might be sick of me quoting Steve Jobs, but we wouldn't have, funds on computers if Steve Jobs hadn't got those calligraphy classes back when he was at the university. Really? Because nevertheless, we wouldn't have them today. Or maybe somebody else would have invented them, but we would have them much later. So I treated my working experience as this diversified portfolio. And by diversifying, you may perceive as of now, as you are a student, as you are trying to understand which is the best way to begin your journey into the world, because finding a workplace or finding your vocation, I would say, is a way of find your way into the world, of sailing out into the open. And it's to try to do a lot of things which are unrelated to themselves, and trust me, you'll figure out how to connect the dots. It's going to require some time. Don't be afraid by the fact that a lot of people choose to have very structured paths, which may, obtain some advantages in the short run, but in the medium run and in the long run, I think I deeply relate to what was said before, that it's going to be strictly related to what you find meaning into and from. So if you end up being an accountant and doing accountant and financial stuff only because it's secure, you're going to hate every second of it. Maybe you'll be economically secure, which is important. But nevertheless, at some point, you're never going to find the energy or what is required to keep going, and it's going to become hard. So as of now, as you're young, invest in different experiences and try to understand and try to create bridges in between, disciplines and experiences and the public and the private and so forth. Maybe you will not get returns in an immediate fashion, but in the medium and long term, I can assure you something good is going to turn out.
Thank you a lot, Andrea. Again, amazing perspective. And now I want to turn to you, Laurent, because I think that now we get a better sense of how important it is to actually, try and explore new areas and maybe also become entrepreneurs ourselves. I don't know, but in your work, have you been in touch or in contact with, students that have done research on projects that ended up being patented or whatever? Is there like any, success stories here at the University of Geneva?
Sure. I mean, if you have 2 hours, we can start right now. I have my team looked at 1,000 inventions so far. So we have a lot of interesting
That's
stories. Maybe I'll give you one or two shortly. Maybe one that is very kind of interesting in bridging basic science with the entrepreneurship. So I'm a physicist, and there is an element in physics that is very special. Is quantum physics. It has very special rules, very difficult to understand, and it looks very exotic. The fact is, when I studied that, I had absolutely no faith in any application based on quantum physics. Down the road, many years later, there's a great company called ID Quantique based here in Geneva and also in Korea now. And they actually are stemming out from a very basic research group that was able to actually bridge from basic research to applied research and then to creation of company. And in very short and easy term, when we are right now, we are all stuck in this pandemic situation. So we rely a lot on digital world for everything. Digital world right now is also relying on the, I would say, cryptography based on elements that can be broken in a way by a powerful computer. This HTTPS, the S for the secure. And the question was, if somebody can break this cryptography algorithm right now, used everywhere, when you take money out, when you go on the web, when you have to deal with the administration to your computer, it all rely on that cryptographic element. If this breaks, everything is just stopped. And it's like 1-0. It's suddenly you cannot take money out of the bank, you cannot talk to anybody really on a secure way. So it's a very game-changing situation. What ID Quantique did is to realize that by using quantum cryptography, you just bring the other level, the new level that can prevent that. And so it was a very interesting way to see this very basic research becoming like the next step cryptography element. And now it's actually, you can buy phones where part of the phone using this technology, and it's going further. They have, they sell that to banks, to many places where they want to such a high level of cryptography security. But maybe in the future that will be mainstream everywhere because the computer capability is raising up, and then suddenly your algorithm of cryptography that we use today cannot be secure enough. You need the next level that is using the law of physics to prevent people to look at break your cryptography element. So just to say that in my modest experience, seeing this quantum physics, very basic, very fundamental research, being moved to a very applicable element that could be game-changing in the future for everybody is really a lot of pleasure. So I take this is one of the 1,000 inventions, but there are also other, and just the second one I want to mention very quickly, but I will stop, but just to have people think, it's an invention to figure out if somebody is loving you or not. So how do you translate this invention to something, on the marketplace? What kind of application when you have a true objective measure of love? So I leave you with that. I see they all look at me like we want more.
We want more.
But basically, this is a way to measure love, but what is love? That's the first question. So you have to figure out, okay, is it love? What do you mean by love? So actually, the message is how your brain is
On a chemical
capturing
level.
an image of somebody or something. Actually, we realize this works also for object. And what's the emotional response of your brain to an image of a loved one or not? And so basically, when this came out in our office, we had to figure out what kind of application we could do. And there was a struggle because there are ethical questions based on that. So suddenly you realize that you have a very specific technology you have to transfer, but then it brings a lot of discussion. And that's, again, back to the discussion. Somebody that is able or has been trained to address this different element and understand that it's not just one. You have to have combine the ethical definition of love, the technology, and what's the market for that, and where is the path for a market that can be accepted by the people. So again, I think entrepreneurship and having people being able to look at the same question but from different angle and bring a solution that is coherent. I mean, for me, this is the future of work, is giving the skill to people to look at this from different angle.
And now I'm going back to Utkarsh, so we won't be talking of quantum physics unless you want to. But my question to you is slightly different. So we see that, okay, there is amazing avenues that you can pursue if you do entrepreneurship, right? It's amazing, and for that you need to explore different ways. But for that you need time, and you need this mental also, I don't know, openness to be able to do all of that. So in some sense, isn't that also a luxury? Can everybody, no matter in which situation they are, because I'm thinking of students right now that maybe cannot have their student job, which means that they are maybe struggling financially speaking, what's your message to them? How can they handle such a situation? Is entrepreneurship still open to them?
I think that's a really interesting question. Let me attempt to answer this. So you're right that a lot of training that relatively wealthier people are able to carry out with relatively more insurance. Look, what has happened is, fortunately or unfortunately, education and a lot of pedigree has become a bit of an insurance policy, right? So my elite experience, work experience, and my education experience does help me get a foot in the door wherever I want. Now, the quick question is that should this be a criteria for getting a foot in the door of people? No, not necessarily. So the question is, how do you democratize access? How do you democratize access to talent, to opportunities, to mentorship, to avenues? So, Network Capital was founded on a very simple thesis that talent is equally distributed, opportunities are not. So how do you bridge this gap? This is true everywhere. This is not true to any country, this is true everywhere. There are certain advantages that come from being able to speak languages, being able to have access to elite institutions, having parents who have, high levels of education, so to speak. But when you look at history, when you look at what's happening, a lot of great innovation also comes from, or mostly comes from, people who've been really pushed towards the edge. And they found opportunity in adversity. So I don't think there necessarily needs to be a situation where people need to feel bad for, say, their elite education or their elite work experience, or so the opportunities that they might have got from, say, structural hierarchy or structural way the things are. But there is a need to democratize and share. So if you are somebody who you believe have had the privilege of a good education, a good work experience, a good familial background, I think you owe it to the world to share it at scale. There are two benefits that are going to happen. First is that it is the right thing to do. I don't need to make a case for that. That's obvious. Now let me appeal to your business mind. It also has tangible impact on your career. The most successful people in the world happen to be givers, people who enable others to succeed. The more you enable others to succeed, the more they directly and indirectly contribute to your success. On Network Capital, we create a lot of master classes so that people can learn from the best content creators. And I see over and over and over again a recurring theme among the top 1% of professionals and entrepreneurs is that they are givers at scale. So whether you have privilege or no, it makes sense to share it and create opportunities for others. It's the right thing to do, and it makes business sense. But the question that you've asked is the right one. Are there structural advantages? Are there a luxury? I think the answer is not a simple one, but to deny that there are structural advantages that do play a role will perhaps not be right. For example, very simply put, if your parents are multimillionaires living in a certain area of the world, and you also become a multimillionaire doing amazing things, good for you. Like, nobody's saying taking credit away from you. But I think a part of you also needs to try and share that access. This is not the Robin Hood model where I'll take what's yours and give it to others. I will say, let's create an opportunity where you share opportunities at scale so that others can do the same, even if they don't have structural advantages. Actually, especially if they don't have structural advantages.
Mhm. Thank you a lot, Utkarsh. Wonderful rebounds on this question, and amazing. And now I'm going back to you, and I want to continue something also that I think you were saying before. You talked about your also personal approach, how you've come to actually find something that you like, something that you're good at. But do you think that also everybody is seeing it as a positive element? Because in some way, just before we had the managing partner of Antal Geneva, which is a recruiter, and so they had a discussion about how to find internships and everything, and they were discussing the issue, which is that often students don't find internships. And I've heard students, friends of mine, which have done many things, be called like ovnis, because companies, they tell them, well, you're great, you've done many things, but I don't really understand who you are, right? I don't understand who you are. So do you think that in some way, we're kind of encouraging students to pursue this, but does that mean that they will be able to re-enter maybe a more traditional working force?
That's a great question. I think it has to be addressed from two different point of views. The first one is structural, and it's related to institutions and companies themselves, the way they select people, the way they recruit people. And I think that for better or worse, it's going to change. There is a big policy debate related to the fact that if companies, for example, become fully remote, it doesn't matter where somebody lives, you can hire everyone in the world. It was said before, opportunity is not evenly distributed while talent is, and it's everywhere. Of course, the policy issue is that people working in different countries have different labor laws and so forth, and of course, different level of taxation and so on. I don't want to, annoy anyone, but the whole idea of this is that companies will have to evolve the way in which they select people as more and more innovation positions do open inside them, because they feel the need of having this kind of positions inside them. So I think a lot of companies, not just the big ones, are going to be having a deep look into themselves and understanding that if they want to attract those kind of entrepreneurial talents, they are going to change a little bit the way for which they use their criteria for selection, for which not just status or privilege become, the main drivers for, the screening of curricula. On the second level, and this all comes up to personal responsibility, which is something that I deeply believe into. So if you have an unconventional path in your life, so you have done very different ways, you are responsible not only of being your own CEO, but also of crafting a story that is coherent and puts all the elements, all together in a way that makes sense, in a way that explains why you have done some things and why they position you in a way that is unique and creates value. And do keep in mind that this is not easy. This is not easy at all, because you have to look inside yourself, and it's scary. And if you look at the abyss, as a philosopher said, the abyss is going to stare back at you. And so it's really hard to fathom with those kind of things. But you have to do it. So you have this kind of responsibilities. If you don't craft the story that you're telling to the outside world, and you don't believe in it, how are recruiters or other people giving opportunities, why should they give you credit? They wouldn't. Of course, this is not easy. This is really hard. It takes time. It takes, effort. It takes different attempts, I would say. I didn't wake up, one day and say, okay, I'm going to be a digital transformation consultant and an innovation manager because I can do this, and that. It doesn't work like that. It's a way of bouncing around things and trying to figure everything out. When I understood that my graphic capabilities and prototyping capabilities, for example, could be mixed up with my understanding of regulation, of business model, and technology, I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity. But I have to explain it. So the recruiters, the companies are going to change because they will feel the need to in some positions. I don't know if in all of them, but in some indeed. On the other side, you do have a personal responsibility. And this personal responsibility in crafting your own story is actually how to tell it in a compelling way, in a way that makes sense, and makes sure that every step that brought you here has brought you here for a reason. And you're supposed to find that reason.
Mm-hmm. Thank you a lot for this beautiful question. And now I'm turning to you, Laurent. So I think that now we've made really an interesting tour on this question in and out, but also from your personal experience, do you feel like there is an opportunity for young people, the students you're encouraging to be entrepreneurs? Do you think that there is an opportunity for them to continue in the working world with this same kind of spirit? Or will they have to say, okay, well, that was my university years, and now I have to go to the 6 p.m.?
Yes. I think the goal of spending a week or more exploring entrepreneurship is more than just playing with ideas and having fun, trying to figure out what to do with ideas and try to translate that into real project. I think there is an element that we touched upon very little, is the capacity to work as a team, the capacity also to network with other people. So it's beyond your skills and the way to project an idea into something real. It's also the way how you plug this in a network of professionals that can help you, how you figure out which one of these professionals are the good one to follow, which one you have to be careful. Where can you find support in different type of elements? So the week, how we structure the week is, we first say to people, you have to explore whatever you want to do. And back to what you said about the path and the career that you want to make, I'm a strong believer that if you give to people the capacity to explore and do many things, it's like putting dots in your resume. You don't realize, but there are many dots. And when you look at your dots after a few years, you realize there's a trend, there's something, there's a signal that tells you you are good or you are interested in this kind of stuff, because you see the dots are making a pattern. Mm-hmm. That's actually how I saw my way. But I think it's very true so explore, put dots on the map and look at the dots, you will see a trend. The second thing is plug people to network. So at the end of every week, unfortunately tomorrow we cannot do that, there's a dinner where we bring all the people being awarded prizes for their ideas, and we plug them with the local network of interesting people to meet. So we have a dinner. If you've been to Oxford, you know about maybe this Innovation Oxford Society. Yeah. It's a dinner where you bring people together, but basically it's a power networking tool where a student is next to a coach from a local coach company, and next to maybe an incubator guy, next to an investor, next to somebody else, and they engage in networking together. In the middle of the dinner, we shift, and that's my job of my team. We make a very careful selection, who is going where. So in the dinner, you get to talk to 4, 5, 6 people different. And so our job is to bring these people, these young people, also in contact with a lot of other people in a very good atmosphere. So it's plugging the network. And the last element, which is also very key, is the team effort. It's good to be an entrepreneur, but you have to work as a team. You have to also understand where you're good at as a team player. There are CEOs that are very good, but there are also other type of character. And finally, I think the team element, it's bringing people from different perspectives together and having them, as you've done probably as the studio, working together, figuring out how to install that, how to the budget you had for that, how you spend that budget, what are the priority you want to put as a discussion, this is a team effort. And probably at the end of this week, when you are done with all this very impressive work, what remains is probably the good experience you had as a team. And that's also a key element in the future for young people.
Yeah, the importance of a team is really important. I remember yesterday evening, so we've had lots of evening call or night calls, and I was talking with Nico, which is the guy that did all the graphic designs here, and he was saying, he was about to say something about Thursday evening, which was something like, okay, let's go and have some drinks, right? But no, there is COVID, and I have an exam. Okay, so not possible. But it's true that I think that we feel as a team that nonetheless, I mean, we have learned a lot because we've faced a lot of unexpected things. But I mean, we've learned so much, and at the end, we really feel, I think, this sense of solidarity, and all the people working for this event, I think, are really happy for that. And because we don't have much time left, I want to go back to Utkarsh, because you said something which was plugging people to networks. What's your view of the role of communities in helping you also navigate the working world?
Yeah. Networks are about contribution capital. Mostly when you join a community or you join a network, you ask yourself, what can I get out of it? That's the wrong question. The question you need to ask yourself is, how can I contribute uniquely to this community? For example, the way he was saying that he as a person spends time in actually really thinking about the spatial arrangement of a setting so that people are able to get most meaning out of that discussion. You should also figure out how can you uniquely contribute to any community that you can be a part of. The word networking is abused every day. Networking does not mean taking a selfie with Bill Gates. Networking does not mean that you keep sending 1,000 LinkedIn requests to random people. Networking essentially comes down to you figuring out how you can add unique value to a community. Opportunities will automatically come to you. Let me give one tip to every student or young professional or anybody listening in. If you want to network hard, do interesting things. That is the most proven way to network. All opportunities, or most opportunities that have come to me, my book, my Harvard articles, a lot of awards, scholarships, have all happened because I did interesting things. Somebody somewhere told somebody somewhere, and I ended up here. I'm here also because of something similar. So don't lobby hard. Don't keep doing funny things. Do interesting things. Let networking be a byproduct. And you already have network capital. We're open to all nationalities, all languages, welcome. But the philosophy is that. And I know that a lot of our audience might be students and young professionals, but I do want to mention that as we think about work in the 21st century, we are entering what you call an age-agnostic society, because people will have to reinvent themselves multiple times. So you will see 65-year-olds starting up. You're not 65, I'm just giving an example.
Not yet.
And you'll also find 30-year-olds who are looking for a lot of stability, financially or otherwise. So I think you will see the emergence of 60 over 60 or 70 over 70, just as you have, say, 40 under 40 or 30 under 30. So what that means is It's an age-agnostic society. It's an international society. It's a society that craves meaning and a lot of efficiency. But a lot of the discussions that we have on work, we only talk of efficiency. Let's broaden the debate and make it more specific. I'm not a fan of let's just meeting for another meeting's sake. No. Let's take few decisions today. For example, if you want to do something on networking, start doing something interesting from tonight and see how opportunities come to you. You can personally write to me that you attended this summit, and I'll make sure that access is not a problem for you through Network Capital or otherwise.
Thank you a lot, Utkarsh, for this answer. And I think that we've mentioned the notion of team also, and yeah, teamwork is also important within a team, but also between different organizations. And just for us, I think again, working with the Global Entrepreneurship Week, and also working with people from different generations. Just like right now, I think there's at least 3 generations here, and it's the exercise we do together. This discussion is a team effort, and being able to work as a team with people from different generations is also a learning experience and also valuable, because that's what gives us the output that we are getting this evening. And now I see that the clock is now turning red. So one last question to all of you. So when we talk about COVID-19, we talk also about what some people are fearing as the lost generation. So this generation of students right now that were prepared to enter the working world, but unfortunately all the opportunities closed. And statistics say that when you start your work experience by unemployment, or that you don't get those internships, you get a low self-esteem, and you don't really reach out for many goals afterwards, which means that maybe now we're facing a situation where right now you have a generation of students that might get lost. What's the advice, or what's your message to them right now?
I think 3, really fast. First of all, it gets better. It always does. It gets better. The second one is take advantage of your most useful asset as of now, which is time, and especially times related to energy and attention. So as of now, if you can manage to join activities which are not, strictly related to having a compensation, for example, internships, but are projects that you find interesting or are out of your comfort zone, please make sure to join them. Please make sure that you use the time that you have as of now to explore as many things as possible, as I was saying before. The third one is, I would say, try to understand a little bit better how to plan for your next few years. I know that it sounds counterintuitive, and I know it sounds different from what a lot of people say, especially when you're young, that you should, you should sail in the open ocean without really having a plan. But I think that you had at least a broad picture of 5, 6, 7 possible outcomes that you can have in your immediate career in the next 3 or 4 years, some things that you would be interested in doing. And even if some doors close because of the situation, which is endogenous and everything, you will still land, they used to say, shoot for the sky. If everything goes wrong, you will land on a cloud. And that's the whole idea, Try to picture 6 or 7 potential paths for you, and try to, go in different directions as of your knowledge, skills, experience, and so forth. And opportunity will come.
Thank you a lot. The floor is yours, Laurent.
Thank you. Very quickly, 2 things. Resilience. It's hard. I know it's very hard for young people, but you are getting trained to something that you will face very often in your life, is to face obstacle issues. You have to be resilient. So you are just getting trained to a very important element, is to be able to be resilient. The second thing is that you also are realizing today and these days that you are missing very important element. Could be social contact, could be loved one that you have not access to. So take this as an opportunity to live a much deeper life afterwards by realizing what is important in your life. Because now people are, I would say, realize what is important in your life. And it's very key if you realize that early, to actually act upon it and then have a very full life afterwards. If you realize what is important when you are late in your life. It's a very pity when you don't enjoy life the way you should have been. So young ones, you have in a real experiment to figure out what is important in your life, and when we are back to normal, you will really enjoy life much deeper.
Utkarsh, you have the closing suggestions.
Thank you. Let me give you bad news first. So in the past, there have been studies done that if you graduate in a recession, you tend to be, on average, lower in terms of income when added over age. So basically, overall earnings are low just because you graduated in a recession. What does that mean? The start to your career is really important. That's a fact. You can't deny it. This is it. However, the good news is that you don't need to play by the clearly wrong rules of the past. You don't need to wait for somebody to hire you. The whole purpose of this week and why we have the support of a wide range of sponsors is that this is your opportunity to create your category of one. Don't be the 43rd person to start something which has already been, talked about extensively in the same street where there are whole options. Think of new options and create it. This is a very interesting time for you to conduct micro experiments with yourself. If you spend all day trying to apply for jobs, you will just surrender to boredom and exhaustion. It's really a boring and dull process. If you've, say, been fired, or if you're not getting an opportunity, you applying more frequently will help. But what I often notice through Network Capital is that the ones that succeed are the ones who either change their strategy or realize that they've been applying to the wrong place all along, or just realize that, the job that I love doesn't exist, so I'll create the job I want and create my category of one. Emergencies tend to fast forward history. And I think this emergency has fast forwarded history for all of us. And this is an opportunity as well as an adversity. I hope my story gives you some points of reference. I left Microsoft in the middle of the pandemic to commit full-time to Network Capital. My goal was to get to 1,000 subscribers. I thought it'll take much longer. It took much less time than you think. Yes, I was not, I didn't have to leave. There were many factors. If you're interested, you can read the Harvard Business Review article I wrote yesterday. But I was so moved by building my category of one, enabling others to do so, that I went ahead, and I hope you do too. That will be the best outcome of the Global Entrepreneurship Week if each of you just decide to follow your curiosity, build interesting things, help interesting people, and create your category of one. Thank you.
Utkarsh, thank you a lot. Laurent, thank you a lot again. Andrea, amazing also. Thank you a lot. So now I'm addressing the audience. Thank you a lot for having been with us.